I love seeing people create and I love seeing people connect. Most people have barriers, emotional, physical, relational, for why they're unable to connect, either with creator, God, higher power, or with family members or with their dreams and visions, right? And this whole project about like, okay, you have a vision. How can we walk it through to become a reality out of the mind, out of the sketchbook, and actually have it on paper? So my wife and I in 2018, we spent 6 months every day out in the sun in a hammock, envisioning, dreaming. If we could do anything in the whole world, what would we do? What's the most impactful thing that will create the biggest ripple of connection and change through the world? What will create peace in the world?
My people, welcome to the Principled Minds podcast, where we bring to you a person or a message to help you uncover the core principles of making your vision for your career and personal life a reality. Relax, open your mind, and be ready to receive at least one piece of information that may encourage you to take action today. Welcome to the family. Welcome back to the Leading Effective Team series. My name is Charles Mocha. I am the host and founder of the Principled Minds podcast. I have had the honor of enjoying so many conversations throughout my time as a podcast host, but there's something special about this particular episode. Our guest today takes us on a journey to building a strong relationship with a team as a leader, with a focus on first addressing how to build a relationship with ourselves, from enhancing communication to managing frustration for you and your teams, to managing overcommitment, and so much more. Our guest is a co-founder of Profitable Living, which is a multi-tiered coaching community that inspires family-first entrepreneurs to create peace in their hearts, harmony in their homes, and ambitiously profitable results in their business. I am incredibly excited for this conversation and cannot wait for you to be part of it. So without any further ado, join me in a conversation with our guest today, Daniel Adams. Hey, Daniel, how are you?
Doing well, Charles. How are you?
I am fantastic. It is so good to have you here on the show. Welcome to the Principled Minds. It's a community of people who are very, very visionary and interested in knowing what they can do to realize the vision that they have for their life and for their personal lives and for their careers. So the topic we're going to be talking on today is a pretty important one. Each and every one of us have relationships that we currently have that we want to strengthen, relationships that we want to have but do not know how to navigate, even initiating a first conversation to build those relationships, and relationships that we just want to end. And I'm really curious to hear your perspective as we think about the theme of the year, which is building powerful teams. Curious to know from you what we could do to develop or strengthen the techniques to develop and strengthen the relationships we have and we want to develop. So really good to have you on the show.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here, excited to share, excited to learn.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I typically love to start my episodes with gratitude. So my first question to you is, what has made you smile in the past 7 days? So within the past week, what has put a smile on your face? You're already smiling. You've been smiling literally since when we started talking. So maybe an easy question for you.
Pretty much anytime I connect with people, there's a smile there. There's something magical that passes between the eyeballs of human beings that often brings a smile to my face, and that's happened. We bought a new house in May. It's our first home. It's being built still. And so there's people moving in from all over. And to meet so many people from different cultures and say hello, and many of them say my English is terrible, and I say that's okay. Teach me how to say hello in South Korean, and teach me how to say hello in Hindi, and teach me how to say hello in your regional dialect. That brings a smile to my face because there's giving and receiving happening.
That's just really interesting. It's giving and receiving happening. So you just moved to the neighborhood. Do you mind me asking what neighborhood that is?
We're in Franklin, Tennessee.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So wait, you just, how did you initiate these conversations? Like you just went from house to house, or do you guys have a community gathering, or just curious how you meet these people or your neighbors at
I went,
least?
we walk every day, my wife and I, because we love to be
Oh,
outside. We love the sunshine,
yeah.
and I'm pretty friendly. I'm a very social person, so I seek eye contact. I always say wave and say hi to everybody. And then it being our first house, we had this intention of, in some ways, we get to shape this neighborhood. We get to build the culture of how this is going to be. Are we going to be in a neighborhood where we all tell on each other and report each other to the HOA for sneaky things? Is this a relationship where we all get to go over and share food together? Is this a neighborhood where we get to support each other's kids and get to know each other and connect each other in our networks? So we've been really proactive about inviting people to our home, getting people together so that we can simply form relationships and see what we have in common. So we're holding a like an open house, meet your neighbors open house. So I've been going door to door and saying hi, introducing myself. Will you come over to our house on Monday? We're having this gathering. We're going to drink hot chocolate, get to know each other, build some puzzles. So some of both. We go for walks, and then also we've been really proactive about creating a community.
Is this an actual conversation you had with your wife? Like you all sat down and were like, you know what? We just
Totally.
have to figure out how to view the culture of this community. Like you literally had that conversation.
100%.
Interesting. Who came up with the idea of the hot chocolate? I'm curious.
That was my son. I have a 12-year-old son.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Wow, he's actually in on the conversations. I love it. I love it. I love it. That's beautiful. And I'm glad that, those are the type of things that make you smile because a lot of people shy away from just engaging with people in general. Conversations, it can be awkward sometimes. So you're just not knowing how to navigate a conversation is can just be
Yeah.
very daunting for a lot of people, I would say.
And it's interesting because we're a little more out in the country, here in Franklin. We were at a small business conference in Atlanta, Georgia recently. And, I was waving at everybody and people were looking at me like I was an alien, just like, what do you don't smile at people. Like we're all walking to work as fast as we can, and it's like, I can see we're in a big city and you're in a, 30-story high rise. And it's just like, there are 300 families here. There's no way I can know them all. So I'm just going to go do my thing. So I can see like I don't need everybody to be bubbly, but that's definitely an alignment for me and where I feel lit up. So that's part of my gift that I get to give.
Have you always been like that?
Yes.
Really? From childhood?
Yes.
Interesting. Wow. Do you have siblings? Are you all like similar in terms of just being bubbly, outgoing?
I'm the oldest of five. I'd say three of us are pretty outgoing. My brother's really, really thoughtful, incredibly smart, studied very rarely, scored very high on all his tests, went through college for bioinformatics, talented developer, and he's just very, very quiet. No one ever beats him at chess or any strategy games. And then my sister is like, she's a little bit closeted on the bubbliness. She wants to be, but doesn't want to like be too much for anybody. So she's pretty quiet until she's invited and then she'll warm up.
Oh, she's selective. I like that strategy. It's like I'm going to pick and choose when I get to be bubbly.
Right.
You have to have the pleasure of getting me to get there.
I think for her, it's about the relationship. If it's safe with somebody, she'll totally open up and go there and she'll be bright and funny. But otherwise she's like very, very reserved until somebody invites her into the space. So it's all about the quality of the relationship for her.
Interesting. What have you observed the most about just communicating with people through because we're going to talk a little bit about the work that you do, but you seem to do a really good job at just being able to connect with people. I'm just curious, what has been your observations on how people communicate, how people try to engage, just from the experience so far?
Well, it's interesting working as a coach because I get to read body language for a living. There's so much power in telling the truth. There's so much power in being open and vulnerable. There's so much power in being honest and authentic. This is what creates trust. And so when I watch people communicate, the words are maybe 10% of it. Because I listen for the intonation. Is the throat closed or open? Is the mouth closed or open? Is it through gritted teeth? or is it smiles and excitement? I listen for tonality and, are there rises and falls, and how's the pacing? Is it really rapid or is it really slow? So in any communication, there's so much being communicated by body language. There's so much being communicated by tone and pacing. There's an energy behind it all. And that's really important to notice too. And, we could go a lot of different directions with this, but it's fascinating to notice, like, there's so much more besides just the words. And I think that's really important to notice, especially when two people are trying to seek to understand each other, or when two groups are trying to seek to understand each other.
What do you notice about my body language? As soon as we started talking, was literally the first question that came to mind when you started talking. I was like, body language. What is she notice? What is he noticing?
Yeah, like totally. What I see from you, Charles, and what I feel from you is like very relaxed in the shoulders. I hear the sound coming from your chest, which is different than sound coming from your throat or sound coming from the back of your head or sound coming from your nose. I see there's a warmth in your features. There's a stillness and a calmness and a groundedness. It's different than flighty or big movement or excited. Like you're engaging, but not overly exuberant. You ask really interesting questions. You're articulate and thoughtful before you speak. That's what I've noticed so far.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's a whole skill, Daniel. That is a whole skill. And the fact that you noticed that while communicating with me actively is also pretty impressive. How did you build that skill? Like, is that natural? Can people actually build that skill set?
It can be built for sure. Some people come by it naturally. My mind moves really rapidly, so I have lots and lots of thoughts, and I notice lots and lots of details, and especially related to people. And there's a feeling that goes with it too. And yes, it can be developed. I know there were a lot of literature I read when I was going through the music therapy program and credentialing to serve in that way. And when I was serving as a chaplain in hospice, there was a lot of, because I sat bedside with a lot of people on hospice care. It's like 800 patients and their families. And so we got to watch when somebody can't speak, we got to watch for how they were communicating. And so a lot of that was repetition and hours and hours and hours of sitting, listening, observing, and responding to whatever we were seeing. So like, yes, it can be developed both intellectually. Like there are a lot of great books on body language. Nonviolent Communication is a must read. Crucial Conversations, must read. And then The Powers of Observation, I think, are really important as far as like, if anybody's looking to develop these skills of the intangibles of communication.
That is so important because I don't think a lot of people really think about the nuances in communication. And you saying all of that, it's really powerful to think about, because some people could be saying all manner of things without actually saying anything, just by observing them. Like you said, body language, just facial expressions. There's just so much that comes with communication, and sometimes just silence. Like, that's one thing I've also noticed, which I think is so powerful if being used well and properly. But really appreciate you sharing that. Now, I want to dive into the topic for today. But before that, we'd love to get people to get to know you a little bit more. So if you could share with me, what makes your work impactful? What work do you do? Just give us some more perspective on that. But why you think the work that you do is impactful? That would be great.
That's such a great question with so much that's part of it. We love to coach. It's funny, as much as we talk about communication, it's like now I'm without words. I love seeing people create, and I love seeing people connect. Most people have barriers, emotional, physical, relational, for why they're unable to connect, either with creator, God, higher power, or with family members, or with their dreams and visions, right? And this whole project about like, okay, you have a vision, how can we walk it through to become a reality, out of the mind, out of the sketchbook, and actually have it on paper? So my wife and I in 2018, we spent 6 months every day out in the sun in a hammock, envisioning, dreaming. If we could do anything in the whole world, what would we do? What's the most impactful thing that will create the biggest ripple of connection and change through the world? What will create peace in the world? And the closest thing we found was coaching. And the closest thing we found was coaching in families, because family is where so much training happens. Family is where everybody's core wounds come from, that they often create pain for others because of how they experienced growing up in their family, whether there was lots of food or not a lot of food, whether it was competitive with siblings to get time and attention, or whether everybody was on the same team. So to understand our patterns, that's what we love to coach on, is understanding what are the patterns we've learned. Are those working for you? Yes or no? And what are the patterns that actually help us to create what we desire to create? And that I love watching. And the impact of that has been huge. For example, we were working with a medical doctor. He's done more than 40,000 patient sessions. So highly experienced. He loved what he does. And at the same time, he was really frustrated by the insurance system, because insurance said, well, you have to do this service, but you can't give this service. And he said, well, yeah, but the patient really needs this medical care. And they said, that's fine, but insurance doesn't cover it. So the patient didn't get that care. And he's like, this is ridiculous. Like, we can't give them the thing that they need. My hands are tied. So he went and started his own private practice that's affordable. So it's $65 a month and up to 24 visits a year. And he gives all, because they don't accept insurance and don't run anything through insurance, he can get people $55 medication that's really $1. And they just distribute it straight from. So he's getting, like, that kind of ripple is powerful, because now he's serving 400 families and giving them the healthcare that they really need at a price that they can afford. And we got to coach him through that, because his business had to succeed. He has to be profitable so that he can keep giving his gift. And that's the kind of ripple that I love to see as a coach.
How were you able to determine the patterns in his family to be able to help him or coach him through that?
We have some assessment tools that help us understand what the patterns are. And some of that is how we talk. Some of that is how we treat our kids. Some of that's how we treat our significant other or our spouse. Some of that's how we relate to God. Some of that's how we relate to ourselves. And so we use some of the assessment data to understand that. And then also, as we explore together, I love working with people for 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, so we can develop a relationship and we can start over time to see some of the themes and the patterns. We look at what are some of the beliefs. And then we look at, well, why do I believe that about the world? What's the filter that I'm looking through? And what do I believe about myself, right? And we look at some people who have visions on paper, but then they're not able to come into the marketplace and be physical, tangible, like, oh, I made this. And part of that was because of the way they thought about themselves and their ability, right? And they were focused on, if I fail once, maybe nobody wanted it, so I quit, right? And then we get to look at, like, well, why? And is that pattern working? So we use the idea that everything in our space is feedback. Yeah. Everything in our space is showing us where we can grow if we get curious about it. And that's been a big tool to understand, like, what we think and why we think it, and then put new patterns in place.
How were you able to even come up with that type of assessment? The assessment seems very nuanced, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, for someone who is in a position where either they can't afford your services, as an example, and they want to try this themselves in terms of what they can do to build that level of self-awareness to help them really just determine the patterns in their life that they can hopefully correct in order for them to turn their vision into reality. What would you share with that type of person? But I want to understand that tool specifically, and maybe, how that could be replicated for just anyone listening.
Sure. So the simplest version is we get to tune into the body, because the body gives messages. When I am in alignment, when I'm open, when I'm willing, when I'm able to learn, when I'm excited, when I have a desire and I allow that desire, when I have an idea, every time an idea comes, I can either kill it and have all the reasons that it's stupid or it's not going to work or it's a terrible idea, or I can get curious about it.
Yeah.
And depending which direction I go, my body will react. Often when I kill ideas, my stomach clenches, my jaw gets tight, my shoulders get tight. Sometimes my pelvic floor will squeeze. My throat gets tight. There's just a lot of tightness in the body. When I get curious about things, the same way that a child gets curious. Oh, dirt. I wonder what that tastes like. Lick. Like, children have no problem getting messy, getting dirty, touching, smelling. They use their senses, right? And the body's very open. You never hear of children that have sleep apnea. They all sleep really well, right? They all breathe. Then children don't have to do breathing exercises till a lot of them go to school and they get told that their ideas are stupid or wrong, or that, they're not performing at the level that they have to perform and they're not sitting quietly. So it's like the basics are, is my body contracted or is it open? And that's one way to know, am I in an open space? Am I in a willing space? Am I able, are the thoughts that I'm thinking helping me or are they harming me? Are they helping me move my vision forward? Because I get curious and I say, if I don't know how to do it, I could learn. So I go to Google. If I don't have Google, I go to the library. If I don't have a library, I will go find somebody that has the internet somewhere so I can learn, right? Or I'll go ask somebody for the knowledge that I don't have, and my body opens and gets excited. And there's a rush and there's adrenaline to that. This is, one of the assessment tools. Contrast that with, well, I don't think I could figure this out. I feel so stuck. Nobody's going to want this even if I did make it, right? And I can have these kinds of thoughts, and my body reacts with tension or pressure in my neck or in my face or in my chest or in my back. And so to start to notice, what are the body sensations that are coming with different thoughts that I'm having? That's a huge assessment tool that's free and simple and easy. And that can be a great building block to start and just notice my thoughts, because the thoughts will lead me to okay, well, who do I know who could help me create this? And who do I know who I could learn this skill from in order to have my vision come to reality?
Everything you're saying now just reminds me of how important it is that as we think about building relationships with others, that we get to know ourselves more. We get to spend time with ourselves and be more aware about how we respond and or react to different challenges or situations that we come across, and the decisions that we're going to have to make in our lives, especially as we think about building our teams, especially as we think about leading people. We need to first think about how to lead ourselves. And I think some of the tools that you've shared here is exactly that. Before you talk about bringing people into the picture and trying to figure out how to build and strengthen relationships with people, in the context of this conversation, your team, how do you get to understand yourself and lead yourself so that you can be able to show up as the best person you can in the environment you find yourself in? I think that's such a powerful tool that you just mentioned.
And a lifetime process. Because what's risky about creating, what's risky about following dreams and visions and passions, is that our successes bring up so many of the things we don't like about ourselves, because success is a magnifier.
What makes you think that?
A lot of that is listening to clients. I had one client with a media company. His media company created $250,000 in 2022. He said, I want to double it. I have all these goals. I'm really excited to add value to all these clients and make really great commercials for big companies. And I love the work I do, and I love seeing their services go farther. It'd be really great to make $500,000, but I don't know that I ever could, because I came from this family that everybody worked really hard. And, my dad worked at the grocery store, and that was great, but he didn't really have a lot of confidence. And right, he started talking about these stories about how his family was. And he made these changes and offered a lot of value in his company and put some structures in place and focused on building really strong relationships. And people started referring him to new companies that introduced him to new companies. And then all of a sudden, he created $500,000 in 2023. And he was really excited about it. He's like, I've never done this before. And then a lot of his siblings started feeling jealous. And his parents started resenting like the way that they had created money. And so some of their hobbies started to change and they started to take more expensive trips. And he would invite family, hey, come with me. And they're like, well, we're not like you because we don't have money, right? This is one way that like his increased success brought up some pain for him. And he started looking at like, well, why doesn't my family celebrate me? And that was painful to look at. But on the relational side, he then got to look inside and started noticing, am I too obsessed with money? Am I ignoring my family? Why would I do that? Am I starting to procrastinate? Am I being out of integrity with any of my agreements? Am I starting to tell people that I do things, but then I don't? What does that mean about me? Am I the guy that lies? But it's okay because I have lots of money. And so it's like his success brought up all these evaluation points. And it was a great learning experience. That's one of the parts that is often hard to manage. One other story, one of my clients had really, really, really big growth in her company. And right early on, when we started coaching, she found a partner that she was really, really happy with. They've chosen to get married. Her business grew by multiple millions. He was at his bachelor party, and everybody at his bachelor party was like, hey, man, we all know that you just married her for the money. And it really hurt him because he was like, no, I liked her long before the business took off, right? But it was like, here's this jealousy coming into his space. He's like, what if we all just celebrated this success happening, right? And so it's interesting that like some of the problems change as we coach, because here are these like fairly large emotional issues of like, all the people I thought were friends are being really critical. What do I do with this? It's creating a lot of pain for me, right? And that's part of what we get to coach on. It is like a completely different set of problems.
I wonder if success is an amplifier of some of your insecurities, your troubles, unlocks a different box of issues that you just never came across before you reach that level of success. Then what does failure do?
To your first point, 100% it unlocks new fears because now I have something to lose. Before I didn't have anything to lose, right?
That is so true.
I didn't have much, and it was, I have this dream and I'm, we'll see if I can build it. And then all of a sudden I build it, right? Having bought our house now, it's like, I don't want to lose our house. And I kind of don't want to invite anybody over because they might like scuff the walls or they might not take care of it the way I want to. And so I can get really protective now of what success brought. And so that can be a barrier in a lot of ways, right? And I get to look inside again and say like, okay, well, what's our intention for this house? Is it all ours that, nobody can benefit from, or do we want to make it a hub for the community? And that's what matched our values, right? That's when my body opened and felt excited. So we got to invite people over and, essentially give our house to the community. To your second point, failure, I'm reading Mindset right now by Carol Dweck. And she talks a lot about failure. Highly, highly, highly recommend this book. A bunch of people told me to read it. And I was like, no, I already know everything. And then I had some failure. And I was crying with a mentor. And she was like, hey, you really need to read this Mindset book by Carol Dweck. And so I've been reading it. And it talks about when we have a fixed mindset and we fail, that's usually when we quit. It's too hard. I'll just quit. It's not worth the pain to go through this. When I have a growth mindset, the failure doesn't matter because what I'm interested in is effort. What I'm interested in is the process. I'm open to learn whatever the failure brought me. And I think about people like Elon Musk, right? He built 4 giant rockets that were hundreds of millions of dollars and they all exploded. He had a growth mindset and said, what can we learn from our rockets exploding? Very different than like, well, didn't work, big waste of money, and I feel like a failure. At some level, he didn't personalize it. He just said, why did it blow up? What can we do different next time? And this is part of the growth mindset that failure can be welcome, right? And a lot of the best entrepreneurs that are creating the most value for the most people had really big failures. And then they found out what didn't work. And then they used that to inform what they created next time, even if it took a while.
So people should embrace failure then. But some people may be listening to this also and think, okay, I'm hearing embrace failure. But when I think about success, it almost seems like I should fear success because of everything that comes with it. How do I reconcile that?
Such a good question. The cool part about being human is that the only way to understand an experience is to experience it. I don't know what success is going to bring until I have it or experience it. I don't know what failure is going to bring till I experience it. And when I think about, I'm 37, so I'm still really young. There are so many experiences I haven't had yet. And this year was really difficult for our family. We had a number of failures that we hadn't experienced before. And so I've been talking with different mentors who are in their 60s and their 70s, and they're like, oh yeah, you'll be fine. And I'm like, no, my whole world is ending. I just failed. Don't you understand? And they're like, yeah, I did too. We filed bankruptcy twice. You'll be fine. It's like I'm talking to all these people that have ridden the waves of success and failure, and they've grown businesses and lost businesses, and they've made their dream house and they've lost their dream house to foreclosure, and they've failed in these spectacular, they tried to plant a church and then the church failed, and they've tried all these different things and used the feedback from all of it. And when they had success, they used the feedback from success. So when they had the failure, they used the feedback from failure. And it's an incredible way to give love to myself, to be willing to learn from all of it.
Let me guess, you are enjoying the conversation. Well, if that's the case, share the episode with a family or friend. You never know who could be impacted by this conversation. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe so that you'll be the first to know whenever we release an episode. And take a screenshot of the episode and tag me on Instagram at Principled Mind, so that way I will get to know you and also get to know what you think about the episode. All right, let's get back to the show. That's beautiful. I want to transition to our teams, right? So for anyone today that is thinking about how they can build a strong team, we know how important it is that you first get to know yourselves, which we've talked a lot about, some things that one can do to strengthen the relationship that they need to have with themselves in order to better position themselves for their ability to lead a team effectively.
Yes.
So I'm curious to learn about your perspective on, as anyone is going through the journey of building a team, what are the top five things that one needs to do to develop a strong relationship with your team?
So I love that you asked for 5 things, because we teach 5 principles of profitable living.
Look at that. Look at that. The connection, man.
So number 1, and this sounds simple, and most people are like, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard because it's too simple. I'm serious. This is where it begins. Number 1 is tell the truth. And everybody's like, well, yeah, of course I tell the truth. I'm talking about tell the factual truth. Because there's a difference between facts and stories. There's a difference between what is observable and measurable, and then my stories about it. So if I'm leading a team, I get to tell the truth about our metrics. I get to tell the truth about what I'm asking for the team to do. I get to tell the truth about what their accomplishments are and appreciate them. Because it's easy. I was working with a business owner recently, and he said, man, my manager is the worst, and he never communicates on time, and he's really just like, I can't get along with him. And I said, hey, let's go between the difference of facts and stories, because you're telling a story that he's hard to get along with. You're telling a story that you'll never figure out how to work together. What did he actually say? Well, he told me that, and he went down the list, of the things he said, and was like, well, are any of those true? And he's like, well, 2 of them are, but 1 of them isn't. I was like, okay, so let's work with what's actual data here, because you don't need to try and get him fired. And he doesn't need, same way. It was like they're having this big conflict, but a lot of it was just generated by, well, he doesn't like me. And so that became the whole, what they were communicating over is, how can I get this guy to like me? And it was like, no, 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 no. Come back to the data. He's asking you to finish this job by a certain day. Are you able to, or are you not? Well, no, I need 2 more days. Cool. Can you tell him and communicate that it's going to take longer? Well, yeah. Okay. And now we're back to the facts. And this is part of what helps teams move forward, is by focusing on what's observable and measurable. Different than the interpretation I have about it. Can be the same thing with numbers, right? Sales manager comes in and he says, we were supposed to sell whatever, 300 units. We've only sold, we never sell enough. That would be a story. He uses the word never and enough. That's hard to measure. Mm-hmm. It would be different if I look at the numbers and I say, we sold 297 units. The goal was 300. How big's the gap? I might have stories about that, but if I can be factual about the numbers, that's important, right? If my goal was 300 and I sold 12, we'll probably get to have a different conversation about why the gap's so big. But even so, use the data to inform the kind of communication that's happening, that's telling the truth. Number 2 is feel our feelings. 4 core emotions: anger, fear, joy, and sadness. And listeners, if you're open, I'll have you consider all of these are neutral and natural. Every single person that has a hippocampus and an amygdala, which is every human I'm aware of, is going to experience anger and fear and joy and sadness. It's just like our body is literally wired chemically, biologically, to experience all 4 of those sensations in the body. Each of those feelings comes with a sensation. When I feel angry, it shows up in my jaw, shoulder tension. I often have a scratchy throat, and my stomach gets really hard. When I experience sadness, I usually feel a pain in my chest, my throat constricts, and water leaks out of my tear ducts. Humans are the only mammals with tear ducts. Sadness is really natural. Most people have a hard time experiencing sadness, have a hard time experiencing anger, have a hard time experiencing fear. And this gets in the way of our communication. If I stuff down all those feelings, they're going to come out at some point. They usually come out sideways when I'm yelling at my kid about something that doesn't matter. They usually come out sideways when I'm in traffic and I start honking at somebody I've never met before. I talked to a client recently who actually drove somebody off the road, like hit the back of their car and pushed them off the road because they were so angry.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was like, hey, this is a great opportunity to learn. Let's address what you're feeling so angry about that you just drove somebody into a ditch. So you think we ought to address that, right? How are you going to run a company effectively if you've got these anger issues? And that's part of what we got to talk about, right? And find healthy ways to experience these 4 core emotions.
Before you dive deeper into that, I'm curious to understand what you define by experience these emotions, right? Because
yes,
sometimes we know it's happening, and it's happening. If you're sad, I mean, you may be crying, like, well, define what you mean by experiencing these emotions, because I think that'll be helpful. Because I'll process it for myself. The times that my annoyance or frustration has showed up in just ways that I never expected. And I never knew that I was holding it in. Well, maybe I knew, but pretending that I wasn't. I don't know what it is, but I'm curious. How do you experience, how would you define it?
That's such a great question, Charles. And I hope, as an addendum to your question, I hope that we will include this in every child's education in the home. Because I want to bring up a contrast. Here's what it doesn't look like. A child is crying and the parent says, knock it off. Stop crying. It doesn't hurt. And the child is now getting this message of it's not okay to cry. And this is early on, right? This is part of our training. This is part of our patterning. What if it was different? And it's different cultures see it differently too, but often in the West, it's this very hey, we're at the grocery store, pull yourself together. It's not appropriate to be angry to be fearful, to be sad, especially in public. Most people apologize when they cry. Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm getting emotional. Athletes do this. People at church congregations do this all over. It can be manipulative if somebody gets a speeding ticket and starts crying to get out of the speeding ticket. I've heard those stories too. But to have an honest expression, right? To let the tears run instead of stop them. Sometimes almost all emotion creates some kind of sound. I've made really embarrassing noises when I cry. And sometimes if I'm alone, I'm okay to do that. But if I'm with my spouse, I don't want to do that. I don't want to share. I don't want to be seen in it. There's some level of shame and embarrassment that comes with I've got all this mucus dripping down my face and I'm making all these noises, having this really ugly cry. And this is, if I were to fully experience it and allow it to happen, most emotion will move through my system and out in 2 minutes max. When I think about times that I've been furiously angry, I throw something, I yell whatever needs to be yelled, and then maybe 20 seconds later, I'm done. But if I resist it and shove it down and say I can't be angry, I'm just frustrated and stuck. And that's when I start driving people into ditches. That's when I start yelling at people that don't deserve it because I've been storing it up for a long time. So part of experiencing emotion is just saying find a healthy channel. If you need to go box and hit a heavy bag, go do that, right? And you probably have maybe 5 minutes of really furious juice in you, and then your body will and calm down, right? We pay fighters millions of dollars to be able to be really aggressive for 3 hours because they're professionals. Everybody else, we ran out of juice after 5 minutes. So this is part of experiencing it, is noticing that there's a body sensation happening. Where's a safe place that I can do this? My wife is really private, so she always goes, she has a spot in her room that's I'm going to go have a good cry spot. Some people love to be witnessed and seen in their emotion. And so to be able to experience it is somewhere on that spectrum to being willing and open to letting the emotion come out in the way that it wants to, which is going to be a sensation in the body and also probably have some noise attached to it also.
That's a really, really interesting explanation there. And I think one thing that stuck with me was when you said find a healthy channel. For everyone listening, this doesn't mean when you're angry, just go ahead and box people or punch people on the face right there because you want to experience your emotion. Find a healthy channel. I think that's a really important thing to note there, and truly appreciate that explanation because, it's one thing to work on ourselves to try to feel the feelings that we have. My question to you is, how do we then help others feel their feelings? How do we help our teams, the people that we work with?
Charles, this is such a key question. I wanted to speak to, for the other 3 steps, come, join our Facebook group. It's free. We share all the materials there all the time. What can I do to help others experience emotion, right? Because again, it is the most natural thing for human beings. Everybody with a brain is literally chemically wired to experience emotion. The more comfortable I get with my own emotions, the less I need anyone else to change their expression. And here's some examples. When I tell a child, don't cry, usually I'm uncomfortable. I feel like a bad dad. I feel like I might want to cry, but I don't want to cry, but he's crying, so I tell him to knock it off because I feel uncomfortable with sadness. That's 100% about me. It's essentially force and coercion and control of the people around me saying, well, you can't act that way because I feel uncomfortable. Feels terrible. There's no giving and receiving there. It's not open. That doesn't create peace. So if I can get comfortable with my sadness, I can start to witness it in others without having to change them. If one of my sales team comes back and they had a really rough day, my youngest brother did summer sales selling pest control. You go knock doors for 14 hours a day in a city that you've never been before. And he cried most days. He just said it was the most awful experience he's ever had. And it was so much, he didn't care about pest control at all. And it was really hard for him. And that's a moment where there's an opportunity to build a connection. And hopefully good leadership is able to witness and not need to change it. Hey man, don't cry. Let me change you and fix you so that you're not uncomfortable. This is every marriage that we talk about. Hey, don't feel that because I'm uncomfortable when you feel. No. Like if I get comfortable with it, I can witness it in somebody else and I don't need them to change. I can simply watch. I can bring compassion. I can listen. I can ask questions like, what would you love from me? And most people say nothing, just be here with me. And so we might sit in silence. This is one thing I learned in hospice. I don't need this person to have a different experience for me to be okay. I'm just here. And that creates an incredible amount of trust.
The first point you mentioned when building a strong team and looking to build a strong relationship with your team was tell the factual truth. The second was feel our feelings. What's the third?
Third is, my mind just went blank. This is funny. It's coming back. Here it came. Work with authentic yeses and nos. And again, this is coming back to the body. This can be really subtle. Hey, Johnson, we have these 4 extra tasks that have to be done. Will you do them before Friday? And Johnson looks at his calendar and he goes, there's no way I can do these extra tasks before Friday. It's not going to happen. Even if I stayed 4 hours late, still not going to happen. If Johnson says yes, everything in his body goes and gets tight. His throat gets tight, his back gets tight, his neck gets tight, because everything in his body is saying no. But he said yes anyway. This creates tension in the body. This creates stress. It's going to create conflict. Because now he has to take time from whatever else he was going to do, whether that's happy hour, whether that's time with his family, whether that's time at the nightclub, whatever Johnson was going to do, he just made this little self-sacrifice that his body did not agree with. This creates conflict. He's probably going to resent the person that asked him. And he's going to be even more mad at himself for allowing himself to overcommit. And then he's going to feel exhausted. And then he's going to go home at night. And guess what he's going to think about? Until 2 a.m., right? And so if I can come to an authentic yes and authentic no, anytime business partnerships are being made, this is huge. Because it's easy to reach and say, yeah, I'll do this, and yeah, I'll do this, and yeah, I'll do this, and yes. But if my body's saying no, there's going to be resentment there. There's going to be energy draining. There's going to be stress and conflict and blame, probably. And vice versa. If I'm feeling really inspired and somebody offers me this new position and everything in my body says, yes, go for this new opportunity. And I go, no, I'm not prepared. No, I don't think I can handle it. No, I better not, because so-and-so will be way better at that. But it's because I'm not believing in my own skill set. My body also will respond. And it's like, no. This is the thing that you've been working for your whole life. Rise up and grab it like it's being offered to you. And so when we're really, truly desiring something, but we put the lid on that and squish it down, that also creates a lot of communication issues and lots of blame. This is what I see the most in marriage partnerships, where somebody's really wanting something, but they don't know how to ask for it. And so they just say no and shrink and withdraw and get quiet. And then they just silently fume for a long time. So if we're going to make strong teams, we get to build the habit of checking into the body to create an authentic yes or an authentic no. Hey, I don't have time on my schedule, but next week I should be able to get to it. Maybe you could try so-and-so. That'd be an authentic yes.
You just answered the question I had. I was like, how do you verbalize that feeling? When you finally realize the yes or the no, how do you verbalize that? You just answered it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Another example might be, number 3 is closely related to number 1. I have to tell the truth, right? What is it that I actually want? Because if I'm not honest, hey, I'd really like that promotion. But if they don't know that I want it, how are they going to even evaluate me?
Very true.
So I have to get comfortable with being willing to speak the thing that I would actually love. And hopefully the team is a culture where if we're all telling the truth, we can look at that and trust that if I share what is true for me and what I desire, that that'll be respected and honored.
It also makes me wonder about number two, and I want to dive into the fourth one now. But the second one, where you said feel our feelings, imagine a situation where you are a staff, you are someone working under someone. You tell your supervisor asks you, hey, do you have the bandwidth to do X, Y, and Z? And you look at your calendar, you look at everything you have on your plate, and everything in your being tells you to say no. And you listen to that and you say, no, I can't. However, this is what we could do, right, in the meantime. But that response is not a response your supervisor is expecting you to say. They just have this expectation that you have to say yes because I'm your supervisor. Now, for the supervisor, their feels is frustration and anger.
100%.
How do they respond to that at that moment?
Hopefully they start with a breath, because there's this pause in between my response. There's a response between the input, which is I just got an answer I didn't want to hear. This comes up for couples. This comes up for anybody on a sales conversation. Hey, would you love to buy our product? And someone either says, yeah, that'd be great. Or they go, no, this is the worst, right? What do I do in that moment? I'm going to have feelings. It might be sadness. It might be anger. It might be frustration. If I can breathe with all of that, create space, my body will react. I will feel anger in the places where I feel anger, jaw, back of the shoulders, in the stomach. If I can allow my body to feel that, it will move. If I stuff it and go, fine, now it's going to keep stewing for longer and longer. And then I might start telling stories about, well, he's a non-contributing zero and he never does the thing I asked him to, and he doesn't respect me. And like, I can build this whole narrative that's going to affect my communication. I asked a question, he answered honestly. If I get in curiosity about that, if I get in, is there a project that we could drop because this seems higher priority? Now we're in conversation, but I have to breathe first before I can get curious. There may also be a really honest, somebody canceled on me twice recently. I had offered, a free consultation, and she canceled twice. She said, hey, can we reschedule? And I said, I'd love to be honest with you. I feel angry and sad that you canceled twice. The service is really important to me, and so is my time. And I blocked it out to be with you, and you didn't come twice. So I would rather not reschedule. And I'm willing to, if it's important to you and if you will commit to be here. And I'm telling you this because I trust you. And it was like kind of weird. Like not very many people communicate like that. I understand. But I was open and honest, and the trust was there. And she thought about it and she's like, yeah, I really do want this. And I was like, great. I hope you jump on it because it's freaking amazing and it's going to change lots of things about your world. But I got to tell the truth and I got to be open and honest about it. And so often simply naming like, well, I feel frustrated and I can totally see where you're coming from. What can we do to, change your priority level on this? Now the communication can move forward if I admit and validate what I'm experiencing.
I love your choice of words, Daniel.
Thank you.
It's so interesting how you use and, because it makes you feel invited, that I'm mad with you and I'm recognizing that and acknowledging that. However, if you use the word however or but, it almost neutralizes the first point you made.
It just negates everything I just said.
Exactly.
Man, you are such a great girl, but, and like, who wants to hear that?
Who wants to hear that? The ad is so welcome, and I think that's wow. That's a good point.
There are a lot of resources on conscious communication that speak to that, like use and as much as possible where it makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. So tell me, what's the fourth thing that someone can do to strengthen the relationship that they have with their team?
Create clear agreements. This happens a lot with construction workers, where they don't necessarily have clear agreements. The client comes in and says, I want you to build my house. And they're like, great, it'll cost this much. And then they start building. And then they get halfway through and the person says, I don't like the way that looks. Take it down and redo it. Okay, that often costs material and money and time. And if that happens 6 or 7 times on a job, and then the contractor comes back with a bill and the person goes, I'm not paying this. Now we're going to fight some more and hire, go into litigation and hire attorneys. And then we're going to go fight in court about how we were supposed to pay, right? The agreements were not clear up front. Computer programmers tell me about this all the time. They call it scope creep, where somebody says, I want a website. And they're like, great, that'll be $10,000 to create this, 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 and this. No way, that's way too much money. Okay, I can do a lot less for 2,000. Great, yeah, fine. Hey, can you add this? And 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 the computer programmer is like, well, I just worked on this thing for 4 months. But sure, fine. Because the agreements aren't clear.
Exactly.
Right. And so the very best businesses are very clear up front about here's what you're getting, here's what you're paying, and here are the terms if you want to change it. And this, it's easy to do with numbers in business. It's a little bit more sticky to do with people. But to start to put agreements in place, like if you're feeling angry, sad, fearful, would you be willing to share openly and honestly with me? That's a clear agreement. Another clear agreement might be we choose to celebrate each other on this team and cheer each other on because we're interested in collaboration here. That's one of our values. So if someone gets a promotion, we expect you to tell them congratulations and mean it. This would be a clear agreement. Can you commit to this? And they'll either say yes, and they'll join the team and celebrate the hell out of everybody there, or they'll say, it's not my thing. And they might be a better fit on a different team. But these are the clear agreements up front that have to happen in a team. Here's the culture, here's the expectation. Here are the metrics that we expect you to produce on. Is that a win for you? Do you feel like this is feasible? And then we could have an open and honest conversation as we form agreements together. The employee might ask for, hey, I'm aware of my 5 love languages, and one of my love languages is acts of service. So would you be willing periodically to take my pile of papers and whatever? That means a lot to me. These are clear agreements. And this is what makes a lot of space for things to go really, really well and for a lot of synergy to happen in teams.
As you were talking, I was trying to understand the importance of collaboration when creating agreements, because as a leader, you may think that you solely have the responsibility to establish the agreement, but I wonder what role or what benefits there is to inviting people that you are going into an agreement with in the process of creating that agreement. That's one. But then the instant where you have teams that are yet to join you or yet to work with you, but you already have agreements established, do you adjust that agreement to accommodate their expectations? Those are the two sides of the coin that I'm trying to really understand how to navigate.
Sure. I will say overall, there's no right answer and no wrong answer here. Mm-hmm. I will say that the most loyal customers have a voice and they feel heard and seen and valued. Often, if somebody has buy-in to what they're committing to, they're much, much more loyal. With Comcast internet services, I know exactly what I'm getting. They don't change their terms for anybody. It's $60 a month. You're getting this much megabyteage. If you call our company, you're never going to talk to a person. You get our chat bot. Take it or leave it. That's what I'm getting from Xfinity Comcast with their internet, right? They don't send me a survey and ask what I want and how much I want to pay and all these things, right? Here's what we're willing to offer you. Do you want it? Yes or no? And they're fairly rigid with it. If it's the best rate, I'll do it. If somebody else in town comes with a better rate, I'll probably switch over there because I have zero loyalty to Xfinity. In fact, I feel anger and frustration at times because I feel unheard as a customer and I want better service. That's what I desire.
That's horrible combination, actually. For you
combination, right? And so there's this balance of like, if I'm looking to create loyalty, yeah, I want input from my team because now they have buy-in because they help create the thing. Now it's easy to create accountability because they brought their voice to this thing and there's a loyalty there and an accountability there that I won't have to drive or mandate or police. because they're proactive about like, oh, I made this, so I care about it, so I'm going to go achieve.
What's the fifth rule of fifth thing that someone can do to strengthen their relationship with your team?
Commit to less and nail it. Most people overcommit and underdeliver. This happens especially in the bidding process. I was working with a CPA company and they said, hey, we're going to grandfather you in always at this certain price for a monthly CFO service that includes all the things. And I was like, great, this seems like amazing value. They asked me what I wanted and we made agreements together. And then 14 months into the service, I looked at my bill and my bill was $200 higher than it had been the other 14 months. And I said, hey, what's this? And they said, oh, we raised the price. And I said, do you think you could tell me first? And they're like, oh yeah, sorry. And then 4 or 5 other things started happening. And it was like, hey, we had talked about on this date that you would file this certain paperwork for me. Oh yeah, we weren't able to do that. So we'll do it in November. Okay. Right. They were overcommitted on both. They thought they could give me all the services for a certain price. And they explained, well, our team's growing really fast, so we had to raise all the customers' subscriptions. Okay, well, that's not my problem. That's your problem. You told me it would be the same amount. I thought we had a clear agreement. Apparently, it's not a clear agreement because you just raised the price. Now I'm frustrated. Most people overcommit and underdeliver. And then it gets delayed, and then the customer's frustrated. Or I thought I was going to pay one thing, and then it costs extra. Just recently, they were doing my payroll. It's usually a price. Again, looked at my statement. It was twice the price it usually is. I said, hey, what's this? And they're like, oh, yeah, we had to file some extra paperwork things. Okay, were you going to tell me at any point? Well, I mean, sorry. And it's like, they're so busy in their time that they're now not communicating with the person paying all their salaries. This is the problem, right? They're overcommitted and they're under delivering. What does that leave for me as a customer? Dissatisfied, highly. So I moved on. I chose a new company that's small. It's two CPAs because I know that I'm going to get on the phone and talk to a human being. And that's one thing that I value. Not everybody values that. So the opposite of, overcommitting and under delivering is commit to less and then nail it and then keep going. Right? Like I talked to a construction firm recently and they said, we ask all of our guys to give a 3-day buffer. We know they can finish their job in 6 days. We ask them if they'll schedule 8, just in case the order from Home Depot is wrong, just in case a pipe breaks, just in case something's wrong. If they finish early, that's a bonus for everybody. Clients happy, installers happy, Home Depot's happy. We're happy, right? It's a pleasant surprise when I underbid and over deliver. Mm-hmm. When it comes early, when it comes in less than the price I bid. Oh my gosh. If it was less than I committed to pay, I would tell everybody and their dog about that service, right? If there was a bonus or a kickback of some kind, right? These are the kinds of things that customers love. That's very different than Xfinity.
That's such a good point. I was going to ask you how you manage or how you control yourself from overcommitting. That moment when you feel the need to say yes, when you really meant no. How do you control yourself from overcommitting?
Here's the secret. When I overcommit, I almost always gave an inauthentic yes or no. Everything in my body said, no, you don't have time for that. And I was like, yeah, I'll totally make time for that. Right? And my body goes, no. But then the words come out of my mouth and it's like, how dare you, right? And my energy drops and I feel drained. Most people don't give authentic yeses or nos because their feelings are driving them and they're not feeling their feelings. This is where pleaser tendencies come from. And it's at some level, I'm not telling the truth, number one. Because I had this feeling, right, that I didn't want to feel and it was uncomfortable. So instead of feeling the feeling, I just simply said like, yeah, sure, whatever you want, I'll just do it. And then my body goes, yes or no. Now I'm overcommitted and I'm resentful. And this is where employees start taking back their time and they take longer at the water cooler. Mm-hmm. This is where they start taking longer lunch breaks. This is where they start taking PTO. taking never works for anybody. So it's an energy that is fundamentally icky when somebody takes something. That's when we fight. Hey, don't take my stuff. You don't respect me. Right. And all of it starts with telling the truth. I was feeling an uncomfortable feeling that I didn't want to feel. So I told you whatever you wanted to hear. And then I overcommitted and now I'm resenting you. Right. This is almost every marriage that I've ever worked with, including mine. Right. I live these out too. That's how I understand it. But the more we can recognize these kinds of patterns, this is what creates connection. This is what creates synergy. This is what creates excess of time, excess of profit, excess of joy, excess of helpfulness. If we can learn to tell the truth and be honest with our feelings, give authentic yeses and nos, undercommit, and overdeliver.
You've really mentioned some really great points here, and I want to just summarize. So the first step is, tell the factual truth. Second is feel our feelings. Third is work with an authentic yes and no. Mm-hmm. Fourth is create clear agreements. And fifth is commit to less and nail it. I think these are really actionable things that we can literally do today to lead ourselves better and also lead our teams better, especially if we're thinking of creating and sustaining powerful teams. And I deeply appreciate you sharing these thoughts here. I think those are really powerful.
Yeah, thanks for the platform.
Absolutely. I think before we round up the episode, a couple of personal questions that I like to ask here and to really bring this home for people so that if anyone leaves this episode, if you are listening and you're leaving this episode with nothing, at least you're going to leave with these few nuggets that Daniel is going to share with us today. What are 2 pieces of advice you would give your younger self, and what is 1 encouragement you give yourself today?
I would say to younger Daniel is develop a growth mindset. Focus more on effort and less on achievement, because failure is some of the very best feedback. And often when I fail, I quit. These are past patterns that I've had. And if I would have kept going, there was a lot more growth and there were really good things happening, and I quit. So that's advice number 1 is grow this growth mindset so that even when there's failure, I'm willing to learn from the failure and keep putting in effort. Advice for today, was that the other question?
Yeah, so 2 pieces of advice you'd give your younger self and the encouragement you're going to give Daniel today.
What would advice number 2 be? Advice would be work to acquire assets, because assets are not burdens, they give options.
Work to acquire assets. I've actually never heard that one before in the history of this show. So that's a good one. That is a good one. Wow.
If folks are interested in more, Robert Kiyosaki gives a lot of thoughts in the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, talking about what's an asset, what puts money in our pocket, and what's a liability, what takes money out of our pocket.
Absolutely. I love that book. What would you encourage Daniel today?
There are times where I think I know everything, and I love to sound smart, and I love to speak, and I love to share. And there's so much more. So to be willing to learn, to be willing to keep having experiences, that's what's coming to mind.
Repeat and complete this sentence. I have a principled mind because.
I have a principled mind because that's how I was born.
Daniel, where can people find you?
Hopefully we'll get to have a conversation, because I love conversations. One of the best places to create conversations is at createprofitableliving.com.
Daniel, it has been more than a pleasure chatting with you. I can't even believe this is our 2nd time ever speaking, literally ever speaking. And just an amazing dialogue. I appreciate how authentic you are, how wholesome you are, your conversations, how expressive you are. I think all of that makes you just a phenomenal communicator, really a great coach as well. So really have had the honor of speaking with you and really glad that we did this together.
Yeah, it feels like we've known each other so much longer.
Yes.
Souls talking to
I
you.
know. I know. I love it. Love it. But thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, so grateful for you and all the work you put in to organize this, all the work that you put into yourself and your relationships. And thank you so much for this opportunity. Deeply grateful, Charles.
Thank you so much, Daniel.